Hello and welcome to our latest in our planning analytics series. Today we're going to be talking about what's new in IBM Planning Analytics, recent changes in Planning Analytics Server, Workspace, and Planning Analytics for Excel. My name is Brendan Austin. I'm the Director of Financial Performance Management at LPA Software Solutions, and I will be taking you through this topic today. Our agenda is as follows. We're going to go through this in sections. First is what's in Planning Analytics Server version 209. What's new in Planning Analytics Workspace 2047 through 2050. And what's new in PAX 2048 through 2051. What we've done is we've taken, obviously there have been a lot of changes that have come out the last quarter or so. We've kind of taken some of the bigger enhancements out. I'm going to highlight those today. Of course, there are a lot of other bug fixes, etc., that have been released as well. If you have any questions about a release or about your current environment, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to talk to you about your environment. Let's start with Planning Analytics 209. The biggest change with that is the ability to do dynamic shapes in images and web sheets. And we'll go over this in a little bit more detail. The other big change is you can open a web sheet on the active tab when you save a multi-tab web sheet. So first off is the dynamic shapes and images. This is actually really neat. You can assign images to particular items, particular elements in your environment, and have those images come up when people drill on them or click on them or select them. As you'll notice on the right hand side, we pick Australia, the Australian flag comes up. You pick Romania, the Romanian flag comes up. And you can change that, and it will automatically change based upon the cell values. You can put logos, product images, etc. So this is pretty powerful in your visualization effort with your planning analytics environment. The second is when you publish a worksheet from Planning Analytics for Excel or PAX to PAW, you can publish that with multiple tabs. And one of the issues in the past was, however you publish that, the frontmost tab was always the one that was active. They've changed that, and now that the tab that is active when you actually publish that book to the application folder is the one that becomes active in Workspace. So if you want a user to start off at a certain point in that worksheet, that web sheet, you can now do that by controlling which tab is active at that point. Now let's talk about the Planning Analytics Workspace specific changes for versions 2047 through 2049. Kind of at a high level, there's been a lot of work that's been done on the import capabilities. You can now create a cube by bringing in a text file. There are also some improvements on how you import into dimensions into PAW. There's a new thing called Aggregate Calculations, which we'll go into a little bit more detail. You can now abbreviate numbers and views. You can identify broken button links when you migrate snapshots between environments. Hierarchies are now sorted alphabetically. And you can now give security access for certain TI processes through Workspace without having to go back to Contributor Architect to grant security access for those TI processes. So first up was creating a cube by importing a text file. To do this, all that you do is you right-click on where you want to bring the cube into, so which environment, which database you want to bring it into. You select New Cube from the drop-down, and then you can literally drag and drop your text file, CSV file, Excel file, directly into the window, and you can click Continue. Next thing you do is give it a cube name. You can set the delimiter, whether it's comma delimited, quote delimited, etc. If it's got a header row, you'll notice a lot of the same functionality is in Turbo Integrator, and they're starting to integrate those to the Turbo Integrator into workspace components. You also have the ability now to preview that text file within workspace. And then you can go start mapping your dimensions and setting your options for loading the data and setting your decimal and thousand separators directly on the screen now. There are also some improvements to importing dimensions. The first is you can update an existing dimension using an import icon. So you notice on the left-hand side down at the bottom, when you open a dimension, there's now an import icon button that you can click on to actually bring in additional data to an existing dimension. This is completely new. It used to be you could only bring data in for the first time, basically to create the dimension in workspace, and then once it was there you had to manually manipulate it within workspace or go back to one of the other editors to update it. You can also select a multi-level dimension structure now, which is a new structure. You can also specify the decimal separator and the thousand separator as well. Next, we'll talk about aggregate calculations in a view. This one's really neat. One of the frustrations of TM1 calcs, it's when you go to roll things up. It's very easy to roll things up in a sum. You either use the the cube hierarchy to do that, or you can add things together in a rule if you need to. But what if you're doing a percentage or ratio or a unit calc, etc.? You can't just add those across time or add those across products, etc. There's this new thing called an aggregate calculation now in Workspace. And so basically it's dynamic enough to figure out and look at the rules that you've created and figure out how that can be aggregated. And how this works is it's affected by a C-level rule. So if you have no C-level rule, that aggregate function just sums the data. It's just truly a sum. If there is a C-level rule for that intersection that it's trying to create the aggregate calculation for, it's the same as a C-level rule. So basically, down at the bottom, here we're aggregating unit net sales price across products. You obviously can't add those unit net sales prices together to come up with an aggregate. So it's recalculating that unit net sales price in the aggregate itself rather than adding them across. Same thing with unit direct cost, gross margin percent. So this is very useful in a lot of reporting and analysis that you can do, where you can create these kind of on the fly, and it'll go ahead and utilize those C-level calculations that you've already built in the model. The next thing that is a huge time savings for those finance folks is the ability to abbreviate numbers and views to thousands or millions. In the past, what we've done for a lot of our customers is either created alternate measures, which does this in a rule, which becomes a little confusing to users. Which measure do they pull? The rules working properly, etc. Now in Workspace, this is built in, so you can look at the same data, simply formatted in either millions or thousands. You notice on the right-hand side, it's formatted in millions and thousands, and what it kind of rounds to. Another big thing, big frustration in the past was migrating snapshots, either within just a time period, an older snapshot to a newer snapshot, or vice versa, or you're moving snapshots from environments to another environment. And looking at those action buttons, and trying to figure out which ones still work, and having to go through and click on everything and test it and fix all those. So IBM has released some functionality now that those are identified, the broken ones are identified when you migrate. So you get this report that comes out, tells you the path and the target, and it identifies the ones with broken buttons so that you can go in there and fix the ones that you need to. Another big change, and I think this is one that users were kind of clamoring about, hierarchies are now sorted alphabetically automatically. So within your content tree, your so also in version Workspace 2049, there's some additional functionality that's been released, and it alleviates some frustrations that customers have been clamoring about, and how hierarchies are sorted automatically in the content tree. So it's the way that they're sorted in the content tree as well as the set editor. The default sort order now within Workspace is the first default hierarchy. First hierarchy that will be shown as a default hierarchy. So that's the hierarchy with the same name as the dimension. So you notice on the right hand side, our first hierarchy is product under the product dimension. The last one is the leaves hierarchy. So that one's always going to be at the bottom. What's in the middle, all your other alternate hierarchies that you've created, sorted alphabetically. So it's easier to find things, especially when you've got, maybe 10, 20 hierarchies on a dimension. They're now sorted alphabetically so that users can find them. And they always know that the default hierarchy is at the top and the leaves hierarchy is at the bottom. It's very easy to find now. The other thing that's been added in 2049 is the ability to enable security access for processes. What this means is typically a turbo integrator process cannot update security by default. You have to grant access to that TI process to actually update security. And this was the case in architect perspectives, from day one of turbo integrator. You had to go back in, you had to right click on that process in architecture perspectives and click a box that said security access. And basically what that meant is when you executed that process, it actually gave it internal rights to actually update security. Up until now, that functionality was only available in architecture perspectives, and you had to go back and jump back into the older tools to do that. That has now been embedded into Workspace 2049. So you can simply go to the script tab of your turbo integrator process, go to the options button, and click on enable security access, and that will allow it to actually run and update security that it needs to. So now we're going to talk about jump back over to Planning Analytics for Excel. So there have been several updates in the last few months, versions 2048 to 2051. Kind of at a high level, a lot of things have been released to make it more usable, more user-friendly, and address some of the users' concerns. The first up is to show the information header in a quick report. Dimension names are automatically displayed in a quick report. Quick access to the cube viewer from a task pane. Improvements to the design mode in PAX. And you can update the data source or package for exploration views in bulk. So we'll go over each one of these in detail. The first up is showing the information header in a quick report. One of the frustrations a lot of users had is they create a quick report quickly, obviously. They drop it on a page and not necessarily understand what they had selected. It would show the elements before, but not which dimensions they came from, or which cube or which server. Now it's showing the host URL, the server name, the cube name. And to enable this, you can do this command down at the bottom to update the TM1 features.json. If it does not exist, you can create it using an empty text file and save as TM1 features.json. If you need more description on how to do this, please reach out and let us know. We can send you this PowerPoint that we're going through now, and with the link to the IBM site that tells you how to enable that. The second one is dimension names automatically displayed in a quick report. So again, we just talked about that a minute ago, but highlighted in the red box here, you're actually given that column A now that tells you which dimension each one of the elements in column B came from, so that you can go back and either change them and or refer to them later, which makes things a lot easier when you're creating these reports. The next thing was how to access the cube viewer. Before, to actually access the cube viewer, you had to right click on the cube and either pick an existing view or create a new view, and it took a little while to actually get to the cube viewer. Much like in Architect and Perspectives, now when you double click on a cube name, it opens up the cube viewer. It will automatically open up the default view of that cube when you double click the cube name, or if you pick a particular cube view and double click on it, it will open up that cube view. So it works very similar to the way it does in Architect and Perspectives now, and you can just move on from there. Next thing is in PAX 2050, there's been some major improvements to design mode. One of the things that users were complaining about before was when they be connected in PAX, you have your calculations set to automatic, and you'd be making these changes, and you're designing your report. It's automatically recalculating. It's taking a little while. And so they enabled this design mode, so you could turn that on, design a report, and then turn it off, and it would bring back all the data. They've changed the way that design mode works a little bit and made it a little bit more user-friendly. Now with design mode on, you can copy and paste values into cells and clear out any DBRW formulas in the cells. So this is from a design perspective. You're basically laying out those formulas on your sheet to design your report. So when you copy those cells, it's not going to try to copy the data back to the cube, etc. With design mode off, and it's what all your users are going to be interacting with, when you copy and paste a value into a cell, it will actually preserve that DBRW formula and send that data that gets pasted in the DBRW formula back to the cube. So this is a way to turn that on or off when you're actually creating a report, and makes things a whole lot easier. Next in PAX 2051, you can now update the data source or package for exploration views in bulk. So this is an issue is if you have a bunch of exploration views that you've created, you need to change the source of that. You can now do that in bulk. There's a command, a utility now that you can actually update all those views at one time. So first thing you do is move all those books to a single folder. You close any and all instances of PAX in Excel. You start Excel and open a blank book. You go to the IBM Planning Analytics menu, and you enter the bulk serialized utility command. And it is basically entered in as a formula. As you see below, you basically say which path the folder is, what the new data source URI is, and what the name of the new TM1 model is. And it goes through all those views, and it changes all those according to what you typed in the command. It will return with a result in that field that you typed the formula in. It'll tell you how many were successful, how many were failed, and how many were unknown. So it's an easier way to go. You don't have to recreate everything if you do change package names, etc. And you can go in there and just kind of go through that. So now we're going to get through some questions real quick. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat window. And if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you in the next day or so. And otherwise, thank you very much for attending. If you do have any questions about your environment or want to know, what it's going to take to upgrade, we'd be happy to have an assessment with you. We'd provide a free assessment for all of our clients and prospective clients on assistance with upgrades, and we can look at your environment and kind of tell you, whether you're ready for that upgrade, or maybe which version would be best suited for you. Of course, this is both for on-premise and cloud. So the intent of this webinar was basically go through all of the recent changes and additional functionality that's been released. And again, thank you very much for attending. And if you've got questions, please enter them in the window. Thank you. All right, we have a couple of questions that we can get through. I think, again, if you have any additional questions that we can't address during our time frame here, please let us know in the chat window. We will get back to you within a day or so and follow up on those. The first question is, when will the next update of Architect and Perspectives be released? That's a good question. So the go-forward strategy with Architect and Perspectives is basically that it will just continue to be supported for the next while. There are a lot of clients out there that are on Architect and Perspectives, and it will take them a while to move over to PAX and PAW. The thing is, all of the new functionality, though, going forward will only be released as part of PAX and PAW. So when you're talking about all the new hierarchy functionality, all of the functionality that we were talking about today, that is just on the newer front end side. Architecture and Perspectives remains unchanged. It still will be a part of the next several releases of Planning Analytics and supported. Therefore, but again, you cannot use any of the newer functionality, newer tools and features that have been released. So my recommendation is start now with your upgrade plans and migration to PAX and Workspace. Workspace is getting very close to having all of the functionality as far as a developer and administration standpoint that Architect and Perspectives does. And in the future, Workspace will be the end-all be-all for all users. And then also PAX will replace Perspectives in the future. So again, if you need any assistance with kind of reviewing what it's going to take for your organization to move from Perspectives to PAX and or TM1 to PAW, please let us know. We'd be more than willing to jump on a call with you and kind of go through your environment and let you know how we could help assist you. The second question is, my company is not licensed to use Workspace, and from what I understand, you need to have Workspace enabled. Give us a call. Yes, some of the older legacy clients that are on old licensing don't have access to Workspace. IBM has released some documentation that you actually can install Workspace. You can have one user of it to basically enable some of the other functionality behind the scenes. Of course, you could not use it for reporting purposes unless you upgraded your license. The newer licensing includes all Workspace for all the users. So please, if you've got any questions on the use of Workspace or what you need, please reach out to us and we can have a call about it and discuss it in detail. I think we have time for one more question. So I'm going to pick this one. My company is still on premise. What are the advantages to going to cloud, and what are the disadvantages to going to cloud, and are they the same version of the software? Very good question. We actually get that all the time. So I would say at this point, most of LPA's clients have gone to the cloud. The difference in the software is none. It's one thing that IBM has gone forward with is the version of the code between on-premise and cloud is exactly the same functionality in both instances. In fact, in cloud, you get a lot more, to me, bang for your buck. Number one is you're not maintaining a server, you're not having to do upgrades, you're not having to do maintenance, etc. But you still own your data. You can still write your own rules, all that. You own that instance, you own the reports, etc. But you get additional tool sets with the cloud instance that you would have to pay a whole lot extra for on premise. Such things like Cognos Integration Server, Cognos Command Center, those come with the basic cloud instance now. Also, the footprint as far as memory and CPU is typically a lot higher, which you're granted on the cloud, than what most clients are dealing with on premise. There's no longer a concept of a server license any longer on the cloud. It's all user-based. So you actually get, depending on which package you pick, between 12 and 24 CPUs to utilize on the cloud. And so models tend to run a lot faster. You have more memory. You start off with a 64 gigabyte base on the cloud instance. So customers can build bigger, better models than they typically could before. They can expand their footprint to other parts of the company and expand their planning analytics usage by going to cloud. But you also got the workspace component that's automatically added, as well as all the other tools that are just there. As far as upgrades go, those upgrades are done by request. IBM will schedule those. It's typically after hours, typically on a weekend. They do the downtime. They will do those upgrades automatically. The backups are done automatically, etc. So there's a lot of advantages to going to cloud. Your disadvantages, I don't really see any anymore. The data is very secure. I think the biggest thing is moving to cloud. You got to do some work on your users. They have to have an account set up with IBM. Each one of your users basically use your email account as your username, and so those are federated through the IBM site, and then you migrate your users from the old user accounts to the IBM accounts. But other than that, typically we've seen customers actually see a performance improvement in reports running on the cloud versus on premise, because you're now using an internet connection. You don't have to use a VPN if you're at home, etc. You can enable it on your mobile devices, etc. So there's a lot of advantages to going to cloud. And again, if you've got any questions about potentially migrating to cloud, please reach out and let us know, and we'd be more than willing to help you through that journey. But it's highly recommended from me. Anyway, thank you very much for your time today. Again, if you had any questions that we did not address, we will get back to you within a day or so. And thank you for your time. We will be also releasing a webinar shortly for those people that have migrated to cloud already but may not be utilizing all the additional functionality that is out there. So we're going to kind of showcase some of those tools like Cognos Integration Server, Cognos Command Center, etc., to show you kind of what's available to you that we see a lot of our clients that have migrated are tapping into yet. So be looking for that one to be released soon. Anyway, thank you very much and appreciate your time.